the cold, shadowy hills of Tennessee, the year 1817 marked the beginning of a haunting so terrifying it would become one of America's most infamous ghost stories, the Bell Witch haunting. It started innocently enough, with strange noises echoing through the Bell family farm. But what began as faint, unexplained sounds soon escalated into a dark, malevolent force that would torment the Bell family for years, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. The Bell family, led by John Bell, a prosperous farmer, lived in Robertson County, Tennessee. They were a picture of early 19th century rural success, hardworking, devout, and respected by their neighbors. But their idyllic life took a sinister turn one late autumn evening when John Bell noticed something unusual in the cornfield. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the land, he spotted a strange creature crouching among the rows of corn. It had the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit, its eyes glowing unnaturally in the dim light. Bell raised his rifle and fired, but when the smoke cleared, the creature had vanished, leaving no trace behind. That night, the Bell family's home became a theater of the bizarre, a stage for the unexplainable to unfold. Faint, scratching noises began to echo through the wooden walls, eerily rhythmic, as though claws were deliberately raking against the floorboards. The sound seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once, sending shivers through the family as they sat huddled in their dimly lit living room. At first, they dismissed it as rats scurrying in the walls or the antics of stray animals sneaking into the house. But the noises didn't stop. They grew louder, more insistent, as if whatever was causing them had no intention of being ignored. Then came the heavy thuds, booming, deliberate blows that shook the walls and reverberated through the house. The Bell children clung to their mother, their wide eyes darting toward the dark corners of the room where shadows seemed to shift and writhe. Chains began to rattle in the darkness, the metallic sound grating against their nerves as though some unseen prisoner was dragging their shackles across the floor. The air grew thick with unease, and the faint scent of sulfur wafted through the house, stinging their noses and adding to the growing sense of dread. But the whispers were the worst. Faint, fragmented voices drifted through the air, just beyond comprehension, like a chorus of the damned murmuring secrets no mortal was meant to hear. At times, the whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves, low and guttural, while at other moments, they sounded like they were right behind someone, breathing down their neck. The family would whip their heads around, expecting to see someone or something standing there. But they were always met with an empty room. The Bells tried to carry on with their lives, convincing themselves it was all in their imagination, or perhaps the work of mischievous neighbors playing cruel pranks. But deep down, they knew better. The sounds weren't random. They had a purpose, a cruel intelligence behind them, as though the entity was testing the family, probing their fears. Every night the noises returned, growing bolder, more menacing, until the Bell home no longer felt like a sanctuary but a trap. The unseen force had made its presence known, and it was only just beginning. The entity's presence grew stronger, its actions more malevolent with each passing night, as if feeding on the family's fear. One night, the oppressive atmosphere reached a horrifying crescendo when Betsy Bell, John's young daughter, awoke with a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the darkened house. Her cries were raw and desperate, cutting through the stillness like a blade. When her parents burst into her room, they found her curled up in the corner, trembling violently, her hair disheveled and her face streaked with tears. Something unseen had yanked her hair with such force that clumps were left scattered on her pillow. Red, angry welts marred her delicate skin, the unmistakable imprint of a hand that no one could see. Her wide, terrified eyes darted around the room, searching for the source of her torment, her breaths coming in short, panicked gasps. "It's here," she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with terror. "It's watching us." The words sent a chill through the room, as if spoken by someone who had glimpsed the very edge of madness. The air grew impossibly heavy, pressing down on them like an invisible weight, and the once familiar room now felt alien and hostile, as though it belonged to something else entirely. The faint, acrid scent of sulfur hung in the air, stinging their noses and adding to the growing unease. The shadows in the corners seemed to ripple and shift, defying the flickering light of the candle, as if they had a life of their own. They stretched and twisted unnaturally, creating shapes that resembled clawed hands reaching out toward the Bell family. John Bell felt an icy, unseen force brush past him, sending a shiver down his spine and making the hair on the back of his neck stand on end. It was as though something cold and malevolent had passed through him, leaving behind a suffocating sense of dread. Lucy Bell clutched Betsy tightly, her arms trembling as she tried to shield her daughter, but even her embrace offered no solace against the overwhelming sense of evil that filled the room. The family stood rooted to the spot, their breaths shallow and uneven, as a sound unlike anything they had ever heard began to echo through the walls. It started as a low, guttural growl, deep and resonant, but quickly morphed into a mocking, malevolent chuckle. The laugh reverberated through the house, a sound that was neither human nor animal, but something far darker, something ancient and filled with malice. It taunted them, its tone dripping with cruelty, as if relishing their helplessness. The room seemed to pulse with the entity's presence, and the Bell family knew, with a bone-deep certainty, that this was only the beginning of their nightmare. Word of the strange occurrences spread quickly through the tight-knit community, and curious neighbors began visiting the Bell home. To their horror, they too witnessed the unexplainable. Chairs moved on their own, objects flew across the room, and disembodied voices whispered ominous threats. The entity seemed to take a particular interest in tormenting John Bell, often mocking him in a guttural, inhuman voice that sent chills down the spines of all who heard it. As the weeks turned into months, the spirit grew bolder, its presence in the Bell household becoming an inescapable force of dread. It no longer confined itself to whispers in the dark or the occasional rattling of chains. Instead, it began to speak with startling clarity, its voice ranging from a deep, guttural growl to a mocking, sing-song tone that sent chills down the spines of all who heard it. The entity identified itself as Kate, though its true nature remained an enigma. Was it truly the restless spirit of Kate Batts, a neighbor rumored to have cursed John Bell after a bitter land dispute? Or was it something far darker, a demon conjured by some unknown force, intent on spreading misery and chaos? The speculation only added to the pervasive fear that gripped the Bell family. Kate's hatred for John Bell was undeniable and deeply personal. She taunted him with venomous glee, mocking his every move and predicting his death with chilling certainty. "You'll not live to see the next harvest," she hissed one night, her voice reverberating through the house like a death knell. Yet, in a bizarre twist, Kate displayed an almost tender fondness for Lucy Bell, John's wife. She often referred to Lucy as the sweetest woman to ever walk the earth, her tone softening whenever she spoke of her. Kate would serenade Lucy with hymns, her ethereal voice filling the house with haunting melodies. On occasion, she would leave small gifts for Lucy, fresh fruit, wildflowers, and even neatly folded linens. These acts of kindness stood in stark contrast to the relentless torment she inflicted on the rest of the family, making her behavior all the more unsettling. It was as if Kate relished playing the roles of both tormentor and benefactor, keeping the Bells perpetually off balance, unsure of what to expect next. The haunting reached its peak in 1820 when John Bell's health began to deteriorate rapidly, as though an unseen force was draining the life from him. He suffered from strange, unexplainable symptoms, violent twitching, agonizing convulsions, and a persistent weakness that left him unable to rise from his bed. His once strong frame withered, and his face grew pale and gaunt, haunted by the torment he endured daily. The family watched helplessly as he wasted away, powerless against the invisible force that seemed to revel in his suffering. Kate took full credit for his condition, her cruel laughter echoing through the house as she gloated over her handiwork. "He will never rise again," she declared one night, her voice reverberating through the walls like a chilling funeral bell. It was as though the house itself carried her malice, amplifying her words to ensure no one could escape the weight of her threat. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell was found lifeless in his bed, his face pale and twisted in an expression of agony. Beside him lay a small vial of an unknown liquid, its contents nearly gone. The atmosphere in the Bell home was thick with dread as the family tried to piece together what had happened. When they confronted Kate, her chilling reply left them paralyzed with fear. "I gave him that poison. He's mine now." Her words were laced with triumph, a sinister declaration of her ultimate victory. To solidify her claim, she erupted into a maniacal laugh, a sound so unnatural and piercing that it seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. It reverberated through the walls like the wail of a banshee, filling every corner with a sense of doom. John Bell's death was officially deemed mysterious, but those who knew the family whispered of the entity's involvement. His funeral, meant to be a solemn farewell, became a chilling spectacle. As mourners gathered, a heavy silence fell over the crowd, broken only by the occasional sobs of grief. Then, without warning, Kate's voice rang out, loud and mocking, singing a drunken, taunting tune. The eerie melody sent shivers through the mourners, her laughter interspersed with the song as if she were reveling in their despair. It was as if she wanted to ensure that no one, not even in death, would forget the terror she had wrought. After John Bell's death, the spirit's activity began to wane, though it never disappeared entirely. It promised to return in 7 years, a promise it kept when it briefly reappeared in 1828 to haunt John Bell Jr. During this time, the entity engaged in lengthy philosophical discussions with him, debating religion, morality, and the nature of the afterlife. Then, just as suddenly as it had arrived, it vanished again, leaving behind a legacy of fear and unanswered questions. To this day, the Bell Witch haunting remains one of the most well-documented paranormal cases in American history. Skeptics have tried to debunk the story, suggesting it was a hoax or the result of mass hysteria, but for those who lived through it, the terror was all too real. The Bell family's descendants still speak of the haunting in hushed tones, and the Bell Witch Cave, located near the site of the old Bell Farm, has become a popular destination for thrill seekers and paranormal investigators. Visitors to the cave report strange occurrences, unexplained lights, chilling whispers, and the feeling of being watched. Some claim to have seen the ghostly figure of a woman in the shadows, her eyes burning with an otherworldly light. Whether these experiences are the work of the infamous Bell Witch or simply the product of overactive imaginations, one thing is certain. The story of the Bell Witch continues to captivate and terrify, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. The Bell Witch haunting is not just a ghost story. It is a tale of human endurance in the face of the unexplainable, a dark chapter in the history of a family and a community that were forever changed by their brush with the supernatural. And as the legend grows, passed down from generation to generation, it serves as a haunting reminder that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved, lurking in the shadows, waiting to be told.